So the first one is wording. Similar to the way you can have wording bias in media, you can have wording bias in polling questions. And these are a few examples. You can have what I've termed here ugly wording. This is following the death of actress Katharine Hepburn. There was a poll gauging how much people liked her. For those of you that don't know, Katharine Hepburn was an actress primarily active in the 50s, 60s, and 70s, and she was known for being someone who sort of broke away from the traditional behavior of mid 20th century actress. And as this question states, everyone talks about how Katharine Hepburn was a role model. She wore pants, had a long affair with a married man, never had kids, and never married. Is this a good role model? Yes or no? All of that is true. All of that is true, but the wording is leading the respondent to a particular answer. You can also have these types of polls for political candidates. So, for example, Donald J. Trump has gone bankrupt 4 times and has been married and divorced numerous times. Do you support him for president? Yes or no? You can also have issue-based questions with regard to wording. In order to prevent criminal terrorists and the mentally deranged from easily obtaining firearms, do you support or oppose legislation that requires background checks be completed on every person that wants a firearm? So by inserting the phrasing about, in order to prevent criminal, terrorists, and mentally deranged from getting firearms, you're priming, which we'll get into, through wording, priming the respondent to think about firearms and potentially negative consequences, such as mass shootings and terrorist incidents. But the wording, like I said, is being used to prime the respondent. So what is priming? Priming is when you attempt to highlight an aspect of a certain issue in order to lead the respondent into some certain type of response. So for example, here's an experiment that was done to see whether images can prime respondents into certain answers. So a control group was shown the picture of this building on the right without the flags. And afterwards, they were asked to respond to the question of whether or not they supported Barack Obama or McCain in the 2008 presidential election. The treatment group was shown the image on the left with the 2 flags inserted, or the 2 flag poles and then 3 additional flags in the photograph. Same building, everything else about the photograph is exactly the same, except for the presence of the 2 flags. Now, for those of you who may not be aware, John McCain did have a long record of military service. In fact, he was a POW in the Vietnam War. So the idea was to see if the American flags triggered some sort of reverence for the military, patriotism, and other sorts of sentiments. The result was that the randomly selected treatment group that saw the pictures of the flags showed a statistically significant increase in support for John McCain. So this did not necessarily give them any more information about John McCain. It didn't give them any information about Barack Obama. It didn't highlight anything in particular about their campaign. It only showed them the flag. And so it triggered this response, or at least the theory goes, in getting people to think about US patriotism, the military, and things like that with the simple presence of the flag. So priming respondents into certain responses, into certain answers, is actually very easy to do. And pollsters need to be very careful whenever they're designing public polling instruments. Framing is exactly what it was with regard to media. It's when you choose to present the same information in different ways. So for example, there's this problem set here. If you have a group of 600 people, let's say they're passengers on a ship or an airplane, and both are going down or whatever, And you have two options to try and save people. If you choose option A, 200 people will be saved. If you choose option B, there's a 1/3 chance that 600 people will be saved and a 2/3 chance that no people will be saved. Which one are you likely to choose? So you might think that program A is the best option, guaranteed 200 people. You don't want even this option that nobody will survive. Or you might choose program B, where at least there's a possibility that 600 people will survive. And the truth is, these are actually two different ways of presenting the same scenario. If you have a 1/3 chance that 600 people will survive and a 2/3 chance no one will survive, well, that averages out to an expectation that around 200 people will survive. So these are two different ways of showing the exact same result.